I'm Greg Moffett. I'm a criminal profiler, an author, college professor, and a psychologist. But when it's hunting season, I'm in the woods as much as I can be. Welcome to Southern Hunter. Welcome back to Southern Hunter. It's another beautiful day here in Georgia. I got up really early, as soon as the light came up. Been picking blueberries for a good while, trying to beat the horseflies and the humidity. So where we left last time, I contacted a broker. I have my list of things that I must have and my negotiables. And my agent has looked at those things and sent me several ideas. So for the last 2 weeks, we've gone back and forth. He sent me ideas, I've responded. He sent me more ideas, and I've responded. So today what we're going to do is look at that process. So let's go inside and take a look. I've done almost all the work so far from the comfort of my office. I can't even imagine what it must have been like in an age before the internet, when people had to spend hours going to county land offices, looking up plats, trying to track down homeowners. That must have been tedious. So what I can do in a few hours on my computer probably took days or maybe even weeks in another era. So let's take a look at some of the things that my agent has sent me. So let's take a look at this property. It's way out of my price range, $458,000. But like I told you at the beginning, it's not that I'm going to buy this property, but I'm going to take a chance to look at it and see the kinds of things I like and what I don't like. And one thing I like about this property is that you can see that it's almost rectangle. And it's also surrounded, as you can see right here, by rural areas. So we don't have any industrial stuff anywhere close to us. So as we go through, we're going to look at other issues. Have a power line right here. You can see there's some sort of clear cut right here, probably from logging at some point. But if you look across this property, I don't see any lakes, I don't see any streams, I see a lot of consistency. And I also don't see the straighted areas that you would see if this was planted by a timber mill. So that means this isn't really timber land, it's hunting land. But at $458,000, I would expect that to be the case. Here we can see a little bit about what the property looks like on the ground level. Some trails. We've got pines, creek beds, more creek beds, a little bit of hardwood in here, looks like poplar. I like the fact that there's water on this property, but I would expect that any place that we go, we've got to have some kind of water. A lot of attention to this creek bed, which is not really that interesting to me. You can see this particular hardwood right here, that's not white oak, so I'm not really interested in hardwood that isn't white oak because deer really like the white oak, and that's what we want to see a lot of. There we go. Now we got some white oak. Looks like trails are there, but plenty of work to do. That's probably that area that we saw from the aerial photo that at some point was either logged or they've just clear cut it for some reason. A lot of attention to this particular creek bottom, not really sure why. Here we're looking at a property that is a little bit further away from my home, but it's closer to my office. But again, we can see this rectangular shape, which I really like. So let's take a look at what this property has to offer. Again, this particular property is out of my price range. Love that clear area. But at $360,000 or so, it's way more than I want to spend. But this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for. A little bit of creek bottom, but it's not floodplain for sure. So as I'm looking at this, I'm saying, do I see any signs of hog, which I don't. I don't see any kind of scrapes against the trees. I don't see any hog tracks. I definitely can see some potential for some good bow area. There's potential for a good dove field. You see that big clear area with some hardwoods along the sides? Good mix of timber. So there's some potential here, even though I'm certainly not interested in pursuing any kind of offer on this property. This is the kind of thing that I'm looking for. This property stands at just under 70 acres. So one of the things I want to look at when we look at the closer plat, how much hardwood and how much pine is here, because if I'm going to cut, there's a nice trail right there. If I'm going to cut, I'm definitely not going to cut hardwoods. I only want to cut pine. So I want to see how much pine is available for cutting and what the income that might bring to me and what impact that might have on this property. So these pines are pretty far away spaced. Now there we've got an interesting structure, potential for a cabin. So as the pines are spaced far apart, that means it's going to probably limit what we can earn on it. So just like the previous property, this certainly hasn't been planted just for pulpwood or for pine harvest. But we'll have to get a view from overhead to see how much pine is there. Potential for a dove field right there for a food plot. Once again, great opportunity for a huge food plot right here for either bow or rifle. There's your access road, which is going to tell you a little bit of your traffic. So as we look at that, we can see that it's a wide road, it's well lined, so that means it's going to be a more heavily traveled road, and that's this road right here. So even though it's not a huge road, we're going to get a little noise right here. So let's take a look at this. We can see the pine right here, which means we've got our creek bottom running through here. A little bit of wide space pines here, but it's not been planted. So you see the rows right here, this neighboring property, this has clearly been planted by pulpwooders. So this is going to harvest way more per acre than this. So it'd be kind of like going out and just throwing a handful of tomato seeds or something like that in your backyard and waiting to see what grows up, as opposed to deliberately planting good rows. So what I'm seeing in this property, which I would not be interested because of the price, but I'd also be a little bit concerned about how much I'm going to make here. I'm guessing if you look at the density here, we're well into maybe 50% of the density from the neighboring property to this. So once again, this is a hunting property, this is not a tree farm, so it's probably not what I'm looking for. This is an interesting property, and once again, it's way out of my price range. It's 252 acres, which is probably 2.5 times more than I can afford. But one thing I wanted to show you is the shape of this property. Because of these curves and this inset right here, while on the ground it might be clearly marked, it might make it very difficult to protect these areas. So this area right here, you've got neighbors on the other side in a very thin margin, plus this road that comes right through here. So that means you might have trouble maintaining any kind of quiet, privacy, keeping your deer on this land. So a rectangular area, or even a circular area, which is pretty uncommon, is going to be a little more what we're looking for than this. So can you imagine having a food plot right here and potentially somebody out here in this particular area jogging or riding their bicycles on either side of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So not too crazy about the shape of this property. Now here's an interesting property that my broker sent me that's within my price range about. It's a little high, but it's about 75 acres, and it has a cabin on it. You can see that cabin, but it's one of the things I really don't want to pay for a cabin. It's a very nice cabin. My broker actually described it as rustic, but it has running water, electricity, bathroom, shower. Looks pretty nice to me. But I'd rather not pay for a structure like this. This property also is on a river. It's good for fishing, but I don't fish a lot, so again, I'm not sure I want to pay for something that I'm really not interested in doing. I've run into this a lot as I've been searching. Here we have a property, $270,000. It's about 70 acres, but there's 4 photos, which really shows me almost nothing. That means I'm going to have to drive to this property. So if I were a lister, I would be telling somebody, you need to put a lot more photos up there. I don't have any idea the shape of this property. I don't have any idea what's near it. I don't have any idea how many roads are around other than that one photo that we see right here. So, not interested in pursuing that. This property is definitely within my price range. It's $175,000, just under 70 acres. And one of the problems I see, as we've talked about before, there's not a lot of photos, but you can tell how they've carefully protected this. In fact, it says, I'm looking at this picture right here, it says 47 acres. The listing says just under 70 acres. So there may be 2 plats or it's a mislisting. We'll have to go back and look. But you see that how this clear area is over here? It means we're going to have to be careful to make sure there's not a school or a dump or something in this area. Here we have a mixture of hardwoods and pines. You see this fire hydrant right here, and there's something over here we're going to have to check out. Water tower, that's what it is right there. There's a trail. We're really not seeing much here. This is why I said in a previous episode we don't want to just go stomping around a bunch of places just based on pictures. We want to have a really good idea of what we got, and it looks like almost all of these pictures were taken from the road, which really doesn't give us much idea what the property's like. So we would have to do some Google Maps searching to find out what this property looks like. Not crazy about it, even though it's in my price range. So it looks like we might be ready to go take a look. But before we do that, I want to introduce you to 2 of the guys up on the wall that you've probably seen in the background. And I also want to talk to you about good bow hunting ethics. Before we get too much further along, I want to introduce you to these 2 guys. For you people out west, these look like small deer, I'm sure. But let me tell you what, these are 2 of the most exciting deer that I've ever shot. This room that we're in has several antlers and several mounts, but these 2 are my prizes. This one right here is a 131-inch whitetail that I shot on a hunting trip with my son. To this day, it's the biggest deer I've ever seen in the woods, and it's certainly the biggest deer that I've ever shot. The only thing that would have made that hunting day better is if my son had shot it instead of me. I shot this deer just south of Athens in Georgia. And for Georgia whitetail, they get bigger than this, but not a lot. It's unusual to get anything over 130 inches. When I took this one to the processor, that was my day to shine. And I want to introduce you to this other one over here as well. I shot this one 2 years ago, and the reason that's important for our program is exactly what we're going to be talking about in terms of finding your own land. You can find land anywhere, any state, any place you want to go, close to city, far away from city. And the fact is, once you get your land, you're probably going to do like most of us, you're going to cultivate that land. I spent from about July all the way through the rut cultivating 2 areas in the lease that I've mentioned to you before. During the rut, I'd already shot one buck for the season, and I'd already shot 3 does with my bow, so my freezer was full and my son wanted to hunt with me. So I put him in the very best area on the property. I decided to climb up in a stand that was literally within sight of my camper. I had very little hopes of seeing anything. I just wanted my son to have a good day. And I put that ladder stand up just about 2 weeks before the rut. Guess who comes along about 9 o'clock in the morning? So I shot the biggest deer that year of my 3 friends and I, and it was in an area that none of us had been cultivating. So the fact is, you never know what's going to come running through. So when we start talking about what kind of property that you want, you can spend lots of money and find an ideal property, but just like me, you might throw a stand up and 2 weeks later bring down a 120-inch deer. If you're a bow hunter, you can't wait until September when bow season comes around to pull your bow out then and go hunting. I shoot my PSE almost every day. so that I have a nice smooth easy draw and I know my pins are dead on target. I have 3 pins set at 25 yards, 35 yards, and 45 yards. I don't shoot beyond 45 yards, not because I can't, but because I don't feel comfortable shooting beyond 45 yards. And that's just for me. Every hunter must know his or her limits. So I try to shoot on a regular basis at all three pins, and also from the stand and from the ground. Here's another property that my broker just sent me yesterday, but I'm not sure it's what I'm looking for. It's almost 100 acres and it's not very far away, but it's been clear cut. There's only about 4 or 5 photographs on it, so I'm not sure it's what I'm looking for. But let me show you this. He sent me this just this morning. Now here's a property that's worth a second look. This is a little over 100 acres. It's less than 30 minutes from where I live, and I'm noticing perfectly rectangular property here. Here we can see major power line. Here we can see a minor power line. See a body of water right here, but look at this wooded area all around us. So that looks pretty good. Let's see what else. This is running about $250,000. You can see the major power lines right here, so this is potential dove field or food plot. Here you can see the minor power line. We don't have any perspective on where this is, but you can get at least a little bit of an idea. There's a road running through this property, which we'll see again in a minute. It looks like a county road, but it's certainly not a well-traveled road. Here's that road that we just saw. Looks like it almost bisects the upper third of the property. Notice creek bottoms with hardwoods. That's what that is, I'm certain. This is all creek bottom and wet area, I can tell, because of the types of trees that are growing here. But here we have planted pines, planted pines, planted pines, planted pines. This looks like it's been recently cut, based on this photograph anyway. Here we have another look at the plat. Yep, sure enough, creek bottom. You see all this water? Interesting. So this may be worth looking at. We'll talk to the broker and see what it looks like may be going on here. So before we head out today, it's really early. It's about 6:15 or so. The sun's not even fully up yet, but there's some stuff we need to make sure we take with us. I've got my backpack here that'll carry all my gear. I've got a dry shirt and a towel. It's going to be hot. It's about 70 degrees right now, but the humidity's already really high. Take my snake boots. I don't go in the woods without my snake boots on until the weather starts getting really cold. Last thing you want is a surprise by a water moccasin, copperhead, or a rattlesnake. In that same venue, got my .38. My .38 shoots these shells. They're shot shells. Perfect for about 6 to 10 yards at the most. Anything more than 10 yards away, I'm going to be able to go around it. But this shot shell gives me a spread, a pattern of about this much. Great for snakes. Taking some cutter with DEET in it. Don't want mosquito bites, but I also don't want ticks. It's the time of year ticks are out like crazy. If you're walking in high grass, which we're going to be, we're going to see some ticks. Hydration. It's going to be hot and humid. Even if we're not sweating, which we will be, we're going to be using up a lot of moisture, so we need to stay hydrated. Last thing I'm taking is my drone. There's about 9 acres on this property that was cut in 2013. It's been replanted, and it looks like those trees are probably about 6 to 8 feet high, and from the satellite photos it looks really thick. It's probably really good bedding area for the deer. I could walk in there if I want, but if I walk in there, I'm spreading scent, and I may be messing up a bedding area. Even though this drone can fly over, check the trees, and check the area, it'll scare some stuff. It's not going to put out any scent, and after the drone's gone, the deer will be fine. So I'm going to fly over those areas today with the drone, take some video and some still pictures, check out what the trees look like, what the bedding areas look like, so I don't have to disturb it. I've also got my binoculars and my rangefinder. Both of those things are going to save me some walking today, if I need to check out how far something is, or if I want to see something that's a ways off that I don't need to necessarily walk to. So that's what we're going to do. It's about a 30-minute drive down there. Let's get going. Okay, so here we are. We're about a quarter mile down a dirt road off the main road, past a couple of houses, and we are about to enter the property line on the western boundary. So this road is not well traveled, which is good. We don't want any traffic through here, teenagers coming down here and partying or anything like that. I will be checking for junk, people coming back here and dumping stuff, because this is the kind of place that's infamous for that. Because it's not well traveled, people know they can get down here and not be bothered. All right, so we are on the property right now. To the right is a cut I saw on the satellite map that goes to the power lines. We'll come back to that. Got a lock gate, that's good. So we're gonna go all the way through the property on this road and kind of get an overview of what we've got. This road bisects about a third of the property from somewhere around the mid to southern western boundary to the northern boundary, maybe a quarter mile from the top. So we've just come through a creek bottom. Here we have some pretty good pines on both sides of the road. They've been thin cut or select cut, I can't tell. This road looks in really good condition for a hunting property, so it doesn't look like I'll have to do much grading. Coming down into another creek bottom. There are creek bottoms that run the entire north-south length of this property. I can see on the map, so that's where most all of the hardwoods are. So out of the 110 or so acres, about 60 acres is hardwood and creek bottom, and the rest is pine, and then the power line cut. All right, coming back into some pine. And this also has been select cut, looks like. All right, right here I can see a cut where somebody's dumped something, but it's not too much, so that's good. For sale signs. All right, we're coming to the eastern boundary right now. I can see light through the trees here. I'm imagining that's that golf course, which appears to be abandoned, which is also good. All right, see that property marker? We are getting close to the boundary on the eastern side. Yep, here it is right here. So this tree marks our eastern boundary. So the front half of the truck is now off the property. So I'm gonna go on down. It looks like there's a bridge that is out up here at the end of this road, and let's make sure. And if we have a dead-end road, that's also good. That means nobody's gonna be coming through. There's a railroad track right down here. And sure enough, I can see right there the stop at the end. Perfect. All right, so we're gonna go turn around and check it out. After numerous emails back and forth, sifting through properties, photographs, property sizes, pros and cons, we finally found a property worth looking at. The drive-through was a good start. Next time what we'll do is walk the entire 110 acres. Fortunately for you, you won't have to deal with the threat of snakes, bugs, spider webs, and humidity, but you can enjoy this beautiful piece of property with me as I dream my dream. And don't forget my other dreams, hunting with Ted Nugent and playing guitar with Eric Clapton. So if you see either of those guys, let them know for me. We'll see you next time on Southern Hunter.